In this video, I'm breaking down everything you need to know about S-Cinetone, how you can color grade it in Final Cut Pro, and also how you can tweak it a little bit in camera to squeeze the most out of it. My name is Christian, by the way. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let's go. Alright, so first things first, what is actually S-Cinetone? S-Cinetone is a picture profile that Sony made to resemble the Venice look. That's the look you get when you shoot on the higher end big boy Sony Venice camera. It's basically a picture profile that is trying to resemble that look that was known for great skin tones and a great all over cinematic look. So they tried to give us the possibility to shoot in a picture profile that looks like the Venice. So that alone is a reason to at least be curious about this picture profile. If you don't remember, let me remind you that everybody was talking about S-Cinetone just some years ago. They were saying that S-Cinetone was a great picture profile and that they wished and hoped that it would be available for us to shoot this higher end cinema lineup picture profile on these consumer smaller bodies. And as soon as we got that picture profile on these cameras, all of a sudden people forgot about it really fast. S-Cinetone footage is less saturated and less contrasty than shooting without any picture profile, but it's more saturated and more contrasty than shooting S-Log 3. So I think it sits between S-Log 3 and shooting without any picture profile. So you get really nice images straight out of camera. You can use them as is, or you can just add a little bit saturation, add a little bit contrast, or play a little bit with the colors. It's a way faster workflow. It has really accurate and beautiful colors straight out of the camera. And also it gives you a fair amount of dynamic range to play around with color grading later in post. And also the base ISO is 200, so it helps when you're shooting bright conditions and stuff like that. Last but not least, S-Cinetone is way more forgiving than S-Log 3. It's easier to see on the screen what you're getting, and what you see is what you get. You don't actually have to overexpose anything, and the workflow, the shooting, the color grading, everything is way easier. Of course, you don't get that much dynamic range as S-Log 3, but like I said, you get a fair amount of dynamic range. And you know, in some situations, you don't actually need that much dynamic range anyway. To sum this up, I just want to say that S-Cinetone gives you amazing skin tones, great and correct colors straight out of the camera, super easy workflow when you are shooting, and also in post when you're color grading and color correcting your footage. Everything is super easy and fast, and it's just way more simple than shooting S-Log 3. Of course, S-Log 3 has more dynamic range, and S-Log 3 is my favorite picture profile because I can squeeze every last drop out of the dynamic range and the colors, and it has more freedom in different ways like that. But like I said, S-Cinetone is amazing. I love it. I'm shooting on it right now as we speak. Make sure to check that profile out. All right, so you might ask yourself, when should I shoot S-Log and when should I shoot S-Cinetone? And the answer to that is, it really depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on what you are more comfortable with. If you're just starting out, then this is a no-brainer. Shoot S-Cinetone, hands down. It will get the job done. Your footage will look amazing and is more forgiving, like I said. All right, so let's jump straight into Final Cut Pro so I can show you guys how you easily can color grade S-Cinetone. All right, so this is S-Cinetone footage straight out of my Sony A7IV. I haven't done anything to the footage yet. And just by some simple steps, some saturation and contrast, I actually ended up with this. Before and after, before and after, and that is looking pretty good. Nothing special, nothing stylistic, but in my opinion this looks pretty cinematic and pretty clean, and I like the look. So before I show you guys how I color graded this, I just want to show you a little trick that you can use to squeeze even more colors out of this picture profile. But I don't want to overcomplicate this thing. If you're a beginner just starting out, then just shoot S-Cinetone default settings, don't tweak anything. But if you kind of know how this works, you can tweak S-Cinetone by pulling down the saturation in camera and pulling down the detail in camera as well. So pull the saturation down to -5 and the detail to -7. By default, the S-Cinetone picture profile has -5, but pull it down to -7 so you get a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to sharpness, so it doesn't look too digital, and you can always bring some sharpening back in post anyway. All right, so let me just tick these off just to show you the process. process. First thing I did was to add a color wheel, and I added that to add a little bit saturation on the whole image. So I dragged the global up here in the saturation side just a little bit. And then I dragged the shadows a little bit down. As you can see, that's not a lot, just a little bit. And this is how that looks. Before, after, before, after. Not a big change, but you can see that the colors are looking way better. Next thing I did was to add a hue and saturation curve. And I added this to drag down the luminosity of my face to make it a little bit darker. And just to separate myself from the background even more. And as you can see, I didn't drag it so far down, just a little bit. And this is how that looks. Before, after, before, after. Not sure if you can see it actually, but it really makes the difference in the end. Next thing I did was to add a color curve to add a little bit of blues in this image. Before, after, before, and after. This is looking really good because it adds a little bit blue in the shadows and a little bit blue in the highlights up here. As you can see here in this mix slider, I have it on 62.25% because if I drag it all the way up to 100, it's looking very good. I could actually leave it at that, you know, but I just wanted to pull it down a little bit to make the look a little bit more subtle. So last thing I did was to add a vignette, and this is how that looks. It, you know, brings everything together, create more contrast around me, and, you know, separate me further from the background so I pop a lot more. I basically corrected the image in step 1, and then second step I color graded it by pulling a little bit blues in the highlights and the shadows, and then I added the vignette. So basically in 3 steps you get this: before, after, before, after. That is it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Make sure to check me out over at Instagram, where I post when I'm not posting onto YouTube. And with that being said, have a great day. Peace.